As we enter the penultimate round, it looks like Towards It Though has already run away with the championship. But as we know from previous seasons, everything can change in just one race. Hello everybody and welcome back to the RCI GT4 Season 6. My name is Tim Peck and I'm joined today by Jesse Lee on the comms and Christian Stricker broadcasting. Now Jesse, last time we were at Snetterton, we had a fight for first place that lasted all the way up until the final few minutes of the race, which then granted us a whole new winner. Do you think we'll be seeing something similar today?
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back, and it's good to be back for the penultimate round. And can I just say, first before I answer that question, Tim, we are at Snetterton, folks at home. We understand the cameras that you're seeing and the images you're seeing at home might leave a little bit to be desired. That's, of course, due to the very early time that we're starting the race. Now, on to the question. The answer is probably yes, and the long answer to that question is every time we go to a track that isn't necessarily a fan favorite or people generally associate for a boring track or a snooze fest, actually for us here at RCI TV, ends up being very entertaining.
I have to agree. I remember last time when we came here, we both commented the week before saying, it's Snetterton, nothing really great happens here. No one also really enjoys the track, so we don't see too much, as actually someone's gone off there a little bit wide. But it was definitely one of the most entertaining races that we had back in Season 4. And as you said, Jesse, we can't actually see the track really right now. I will admit, when we're watching the cars go around like this, you've got Boardman here, and I can only really tell that it's Boardman as they come up to the corner, and you can just see the blue side of their livery. So I think today I'm going to be giving a lot of respect to the drivers that are out on the track, because me and Christian, we did a little bit of a lap around the track with the broadcasting tool just before the race started, and well, we got lost a couple of times. So anyone out on track today that knows exactly where they're going, you're doing a great job so far.
Well, it's going to be that kind of race, racing in the dark around a flat racetrack in all the way the east of England. And it's a track that a lot of people sort of groan at whenever you go here. Certainly not a fan favorite track. Very divisive, though, because I have met some folks this weekend talking about not only the GT4 race, but the GT3 race that follows tomorrow. There are a couple of people that actually feel like this is their best shot at winning a race this season, and they actually really enjoy this track. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I like the abbreviated version of Snetterton more than the full GP course personally, but rather besides, there's a lot of passing opportunities here, but there's also a lot of green grass to wreck off in when you get it wrong.
The track does get very, very thin at some points as well, so that margin for error is really, really small. So you do have to make sure that you at all times are leaving enough room for both yourself and the car next to you. And I think something that's going to play a lot in today, Jesse, is just fighting for that space on the track. Now, we don't have as many cars here as we have had for previous races in this championship. I believe we're down to 30 at the moment, so it's not going to be as full as it has been in the previous races, but it's certainly still going to be fairly crowded out here on the track. And when it's a smaller track like Snetterton, you do really have to fight for room. So I think going into qualifying, that is going to be the big key, is find the space that you can get your lap right and that you're not being held up through any of those tricky corners in Sector 2.
Ivan there absolutely threw the 666 into the chicane, and it is a very tricky chicane. You have to go as far right as you can to throw it into the left part of the chicane, but if you turn right too quickly, you're going to hit this gigantic curb, and it's going to throw you off the track. He was able to completely miss that bit, but absolutely slid it in there like it was a drifting event. Well, that's not the first or the last time that we're going to see this weekend. Tim Peck, the thing that's on my mind is darkness probably doesn't lend itself to some of the cleanest racing, because you can't really see too much beyond what your old headlamps show you. Absolutely no additional lighting around this race course.
Yeah, there's not any lights here at Snetterton. You're fully relying on what your car is showing ahead of you, and it really is not as bright as it might seem when you're looking at it from the car's view. So anyone that can stay out of trouble is doing something correctly here, and I think that's going to be something that plays a big part in today's races. Just managing to, well, keep yourself on the track whilst also keeping yourself out of trouble, Jesse, because as you said, once it's this dark, the chance of an accident happening are incredibly high. Of course, not only have you got to navigate your way around the track, but you've also got to work out exactly where everyone else is as well. So I think that could cause a couple of problems today. And as we saw when the 666 car was going around the track, they actually missed a couple of corners. And I'm wondering if they were not quite hitting the apexes correctly simply because they couldn't see them, in which that's going to be something which a lot of people are going to be looking to do now that we're about to enter qualifying in a minute or two.
Qualifying going to be coming up, and the real question here is, it's kind of ironic. We talk about 30 cars being fewer than we have had in quite some time, and while that is the case, it's going to be interesting to see who takes pole here today. You had an eye on one particular car earlier, Tim Peck, because they were able to out-qualify some of the quick drivers, or the quicker drivers in their class.
Well, Andy Boardman is one driver who I do watch pretty much every single championship. I would consider them a quick driver off the bat anyway, but they tend to hang around in that middle part of the top 10, about where they actually are on the table right now. Of course, they've not set a time yet, but that sort of 6th to 4th section is where I tend to see Boardman. But occasionally I just find that once per season they just really excel at track, and so far it's looked like Snetterton is going to be that track. Of course, it is only practice, but for the majority of it they were holding that top spot, and Tord Zidlo, who we know is very, very fast, is currently dominating this championship, only just snuck in there in the end, only 200ths of a second quicker. So I think Boardman has an absolutely brilliant chance today to get some points down the table, show us exactly what they can do. My only concern is, Jesse, is that they're in Alpine, and so far that's not really been the car to perform this season. So if they can do something with the Alpine, get themselves into that podium, I think it'll be very interesting really to see what they can do. But Boardman so far is definitely the car to watch today. They've been looking so strong all the way through practice so far.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see exactly how this all plays out. Of course, we have the two classes here today, the Pro and the AM class, but a lot of the AM drivers are not what you would call AM drivers. It's just the two splits here, and a lot of the AM colored drivers with the red backgrounds are actually more silver, I would say, and some of them high silver as well, but realistically, pros are a mix of pro and high silver, and AM is low silver and AM drivers. That's very confusing to me. It's probably confusing to you at home. But the reason that they've done that is, well, to be quite frank, is sort of beyond me. But anyway, the two classes here today, I talked to Joe Gleason before the race, and he was just about one of the few people I talked to that was confident coming into today. Could be a threat for the AM pole as well.
Gleason did say that they really wanted to get a win down on the table today, and I think that is perfectly possible, seeing how they've performed across the rest of this season. Jesse, Gleason has definitely been one of the stronger drivers. For those of you that don't know what to expect coming up, we're currently in 10 minutes of qualifying. They've only got 7 minutes left at the moment, and most people are, well, everyone is only going to be setting their first lap right now. It takes a long time to get around that outlap of Snetterton. But after the 10 minutes of qualifying, we'll have two 20-minute races, both of which the grid will be determined by the order of qualifying. There's no reverse grid, there's no grid based on the first race results. It is just purely based on qualifying. So qualifying here really, really matters, Jesse. You do want to start as high up as possible, because if you have a not so great qualifying session, you end up somewhere like 17th, 16th, and you're having to fight your way through both this. It's not going to be ideal, and for both races, you're basically just resetting your progress. So qualifying on pole here would be ideal for a lot of these drivers, and we're actually just about to see them coming around the final few corners here. It's this nice long right-hand turn. It just seems to go on forever. this turning does, and there'll be a really quick left-hander onto the start-finish straight. And well, Jesse, I think qualifying is going to be key here. So trying to nail this track, especially in the dark, is absolutely going to change how these races come out.
Sure is. Adrian Klosowski might set the very first lap in qualifying. The start-finish line on the proper side of the straight here, all the way down near the end. Klosowski doesn't set a time there, and Ertan does. Atterberg sets a decent enough time, 1:57, but Andy Boardman on the money with your prediction to the top of the heap, a 1:56.900, besting Ertan by 1/4 of a second. Jackson in the 1:23, 6/10 or thereabouts off of the pace as everyone cycles through. And here's Jordan Daly for Triple R, looking to get their lap in. This might be a decent one. Where will this put them? They've been a standout in the last couple of rounds. Was absolutely feeling it at Zolder, but that's an outlap, I reckon.
That's either an outlap or they've invalidated that somewhere. And to me, Jesse, looking at some of the times that are coming through right now, I'd say a lot of these guys are just fighting for space at the moment. They didn't get their ideal first lap, and quite often that is the case here. I'd say this lap now, the second lap in, that's the one where it really starts to count. Of course, the later we go in the session, the more likely it is you're going to set that brilliant lap that you want to do, but you do run out of time very, very quickly. And we are already down to just 4 minutes and 30 seconds left in qualifying. You really don't get a lot of laps here, and I think it's going to be key to find that lap quickly, because there are a couple of drivers I'm looking at towards Zidlow, for Kazmierski even, like they've done 157s, 158s, and I know that they've got a lot more pace in them than that, so they will definitely be looking to try and push themselves further up the leaderboard soon.
They sure are. Of course, the qualifying here, it is a fairly long track, but you're going to get a couple of stabs at it here, and setting down a decent lap in the dark, get your bearings and your feelings for the track first and foremost. Then go out there and try to set a quick lap like Ertan just did, but Andy Boardman just will not be denied. Ertan set a 56.802, which was good enough for pole by a 10, but it just didn't matter. Andy Boardman in the 69 Alpine, a 156.5, but here is towards Zidlow, the 373, who has been wreaking havoc at the front of this GT field this championship. A massive, a mahoosive 55.922. The gauntlet thrown down. 3 minutes left to play here at 2 in the morning, and it is a wide margin up near the front all of a sudden.
Jesse, I was watching towards those Delta on that lap there that they were doing, and I was about to say I think our broadcasting tool might be broken, because it's currently saying they're 2 seconds up on their best time, and then they crossed the line and put themselves up there at the top of a 155.9, and honestly it all started to make sense. What a brilliant lap from towards Zidlow there, and I think that is going to be very, very hard to beat. That is the fastest we have seen by about 5/10 of a second there. So if anyone wants to try and top what towards Zidlow's just done, they're going to need to step it up, and they're going to need to step it up quickly. Currently watching Ellis here, they are in the mid-pack for their split, going to be looking to improve on their time slightly, and so far they've done just that. They're about 9/10 up on their time. That will slot them towards the top of their split, hopefully up with Redford and close to the 931 Porsche. We're going to see exactly where this is about to place them here. Have they carried enough speed through that final corner? It looks like they're going to improve here, Jesse, by about a second. So we're going to see what it's going to be. They're just about to come across the line quite late on in the straight here, and that'll be enough to put them up to 21st. They'll jump a couple of cars in the split there, and Ellis, I'm sure, will be happy to improve their lap by that much.
Yeah, and Ellis, who had a frustrating week last week, is looking for a rebound and just barely staying in the championship lead. We'll bring you the standings after the conclusion of qualifying here today. Joe Gleason, talking about the lower class here, has just destroyed that class, is clear by a full seconds to crack in the 718 Porsche. So Gleason in the 135 just leaps and bounds better. Like I said, one of the only confident drivers I could find coming into today, and I think I now know why. Yan Yo, the Flying Hellfish Taters team, out here trying to improve upon their time, and they might just do it. They would need more than a second to get up on the front row, or excuse me, podium, or excuse me, the pole position is what I'm trying to say. But Yan Yo might have missed the mark there just a little bit. Mark Wingham in the 76. Dr. Recovery coming to the line. Is this going to be a pickup for him? Yeah, I don't think it was, but it was a quicker time, a 2:01.662.
In the X-Rex in the chat sums it up pretty well, actually, Jesse. They say 10-minute qualifying nuts. I love the rush out of the pits, and that is exactly what we have here every single GT4 Thursday. It's a rush out of the pits, and then it's just a rush to get in those laps. 10 minutes of qualifying, it gives you 3-4 good laps, and you just have to try and get your best lap out in that short period of time, which is not easy, especially when there's lots of other cars on the track. You have to find yourself room. So realistically, when it comes down to it, Jesse, you're probably only getting 2 real shots at improving your lap time here. As I'm currently watching, well, we're currently watching Klazowski. They're about to come across the line. It looks like it's very quick, and they are going to put themselves up into third with that. I'm also watching towards Idlo, who I'm not sure where they are on the track right now, but they're improving their time, if it even needs to be defended. Here is Boardman, who was going in. Oh, this is towards Idlo. We're going to watch towards Idlo first come across the line. Look at this time they set, a 1:55.5. Knocking off another 5 tenths of what we already thought was an unbeatable lap time. Towards Idlo continuing to defy the impossible, showing us exactly what they can do in that Porsche. And Boardman is, despite looking ever so strong today, going to fall short of pole, will be 1 second off and will be sitting in second place. But Jesse, it's not all over. They have 20 minutes of racing to do, and then another 20 minutes of racing after that. Boardman here will be looking to get ahead on the first corner. Realistically, if they can do that, do you think they'll be able to hold up towards it, though, with this pace that the Porsche is showing currently?
I don't know. It is a track that lends itself to passing, but we'll see if Boardman has anything for towards Zidlow right here. It just, even if he doesn't get pole, he's already starting on the front row, it would seem, unless the other Carbon Sim Sport driver, Klazowski, has anything to say about it. But for right now, Boardman just needs a shot in the arm, get a little bit closer to the leader here. A full second that towards Zidlow has put on the field. And all you really can do is try and give yourself the best possible shot. Rounding the final corner, Andy Boardman coming to the line, the Grease Weasel Racing 69 Alpine. One of the better tracks for the Alpine as well, we've noticed. What will this lap be? An improvement? It is a massive improvement by half a second. A 56.060, by far the quickest for Boardman, and puts him within half a second. That's the shot in the arm we were talking about, and a pickup for Klazowski as well, but still third. Results of qualifying confirmed here. Towards Zidlow does out-qualify Boardman. Klazowski and Ertan, the next row, Jackson and Yo, the row after them. Joe Gleason had no rival in the lower class today, starting inside the top 10 in 9th place. Olsen takes second in that class, and then it's an equal gap back down to Redford in 19th place, which is third in that class. Tim Peck, how about some standings?
For those of you that have been following along in the previous weeks, I think you'll probably know who's at the top of the standings right now. It is, of course, towards Zidlow with 160 points. They are currently 46 points clear of Verstappen, who holds second place. Not here today either, so towards Zidlow will be pushing that lead a lot further. Kazmirski's in third place with Klazowski in fourth place behind them. Ertan will currently be fifth with Jackson behind in sixth place. Andy Boardman, looking like a star today, is currently down in 7th place. They've got a lot of points to gain today if they want to push themselves up the leaderboard. Matthew Kingston-Lee will be in 8th place, and James de Havilland and Jordan Daly will be rounding out our top 10. Vasiliev is currently in 11th place. They've had to drop out of last race, I believe, but they are back in fighting order now. Maybe not, actually. I can't see them on the list. So Vasiliev will still be dropped out of this race, won't be improving their position, giving Fouet a chance to pip them out of the 11th place spot in the championship. Neil Pimlott is currently in 13th. Billy Octane will be 3 points behind in 14th place. Tom Bryan's had a couple of rough races, I must say, Jesse, and had a couple of misfortunes along the way. He's currently holding 15th, doing very well for the misfortune they faced there. Phil Roberts is 16th. Rob Franken currently holding 17th, just 1 point ahead of Theobald, who's in 18th. Jurgen Bautier is in 19th, and Jan Yo, looking also very strong today, currently rounds out the top 20 with 8 points. And these are the drivers that currently looking to do a lot better in today's race. Hull is currently 21st with 3 points. Stevenson and Schultz both have no points each, and I believe everyone else hasn't yet showed up to a race, Jesse.
Well, moving on from the domination in the pro class, well, how about the AM class? Jamie Ellis, who had a little bit of a lead, was dominating themselves, had a nightmare of a weekend 1 week ago at Zolder, and finds themselves in the clutches of a few drivers, but still holds on to 111 points. 5 points behind them, Frank Olson stalking and waiting, and in the wings, Daniela Ricciardo with 105. All very close, all with a more than good shot at winning the championship. Let's talk about Simon Watton in fourth place as well, still within striking distance in my opinion, especially if it all goes a bit wrong for others today. Sumanen in fifth place rounds out the top 10 with 80 points. Yaroshenko 74 in sixth. Olaf Krak in seventh with 61, tied with Ireland's favorite son Joe Gleason. Damian Lowe in ninth place with 56, and Wingham rounds out the top 10 with 54. Second page of AM here, Ian Marshall, Redford, DeBont, Power Norbury rounding out the top 15. Ivan, Polanco, Cramp, Farster, and Humphreys, your top 20, and a couple of those don't have points. All of those positions, very much everything to play for Tim Peck, because there were only a few points between all of those different rungs of competitors. We saw what happened to Ellis a week ago, and even though this is a lot larger of a racetrack, it can absolutely happen here.
Anything can happen in any race, and I did briefly say at the beginning, but we have seen in plenty of other GT4 seasons, the lead has disappeared very, very quickly, even when it's been so large. All it takes, Jesse, is one race for everything to go wrong, and you can find yourself fighting back into the podium positions. So I think it's definitely something that's on the back of a lot of people's minds right now. Ellis, looking to just try and claw back some of the lead that they built for themselves, is going to be fighting from quite far back today. Jesse only managed to put themselves in 25th, so they've got some climbing to do if they want to secure some points here. Towards it though, may seem like they're clear. They've got 46-point buffer to Verstappen, who's not actually here today. And then I think it's about a 54-point buffer to Klazowski, who's next in line, but will be looking still to try and secure a good result, because if Towardzidlo gets spun out the first corner, ends up hitting a wall and then not finishing the race, that will put them straight back in fighting, and they will probably only be about second after the result, so they will need to make sure that they can at least keep it on the track today, and I think that's going to be the key for a lot of these drivers, Jesse. We mentioned how dark it is, we mentioned how technical Snetterton can be and how a lot of drivers don't like it, so I think the key for today's race for a lot of these drivers is just to make sure you finish. At this point, where you finish doesn't matter as much. Of course, you want to finish as high as possible, but just making sure you secure the points is going to be key here for a lot of these drivers. And, well, I can't wait to see how it turns out. Gleason currently has a nice buffer of 3 cars in the different splits before Olsen, and then there's another buffer of about 5 cars, so both Gleason and Olsen are looking to pick up a lot of points as well today, and they will be hoping that will send them up into the top 3 of their split. So there's a lot to play for here today, Jesse, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting race once it unfolds.
You couldn't be more right about that, Tim Peck. It is going to be very interesting indeed. Can Boardman do anything about Towardzidlo? All he has to do is get in front of him and defend, if at all possible. We saw that work to great effect in several other races this season. And of course, Towardzidlo no longer a perfect season, and that will have to wait for another day. What can Klosowski do? Will they help their Carbon Sim Sport teammate, or will they go at it for themselves? We've seen a little bit of both worlds from Carbon Sim Sport this season. Love to see a team with no team orders absolutely going after it no matter what. Can Joe Gleason win another race as well? All these storylines and more as we get ready to take the green flag today for race 1.
Well, they're just about to cross the line now, Jesse, and they don't get a lot of run-up into the first corner here at Snetterton. That start-finish line is very, very far up the start-finish straight as they're just about to cross it now, and you can see the cars already shooting off towards Idlo. Already clear of Boardman, has completely covered himself for the first corner, but Boardman is looking to go for it. Almost takes it to the inside towards Idlo there, but not able to find a space as towards Idlo shuts that door very, very quickly. But it's not over yet, although Boardman is going to struggle to find a way through here as the car 68 picked up too much dirt on the side that has been forced off the track and is now spun out, causing a blockage in the middle of the road. You can see the cars here just trying to navigate a way through as there are several cars facing the wrong direction on that second hairpin there. So not an ideal start for car number 68. What happened there, Jesse, is they just put 2 tyres on the grass and it was enough to spin them out. And this is what I mean. You've got to find the position, because even if you don't hit another car, just going off track in some of these thinner areas could see you falling to the back. So an ideal start for Todd Zidlow, but not an ideal start for a lot of others who found themselves having to just find room there to get through.
Gotta tell you something interesting. I saw a couple of rage quits right there as well after the turn 2 pileup. Most of the cars got going, but a couple of them definitely, they didn't return to pit lane. They just alt F4'd. They're absolutely out of here. That is how divisive Snetterton is. It's in the dark. It's Snetterton. It is a whole different animal. And you see the fight back here. Daly's getting put a move on. Is that Kazimierski? It is, as they're fighting over P10 here. Daly covers the inside and just about gets away with it in the chicane. Excellent positioning by the Triple R driver, but Arthur Kazimierski is not going to let that go. Looks like there's a little bit of pace in that Carbon Sim Sport BMW. Towards Zidlow leads out in front by a full second in front of Boardman. Lazowski continuing pursuit of second place. Joe Gleason free and clear in 8th. I say that. Yan Yo, who is actually just in front of Jordan Daly, is actually giving him his best run. And we continue to watch Jordan Daly's battle with Kazimierski, who themselves is being caught by Olsen a little bit. That's the second place car in the AM split. And we see this at a couple of different racetracks where everybody just gets held up or held in line. And you get these little trains going, and already lap 2, you're starting to see a little bit of that.
They're starting to break off into their individual groups right now as you see people just trying to find some position. Kazimierski is still looking for a way through Daly here. Daly has done a brilliant job defending so far in the first lap and into the second lap, but they are going to have to pick up the pace because I don't think Daly is going to want to be defending for the next 20 minutes, and Kazimierski is eager to bite back. Of course, Kazimierski had a very good week last week at Zolder and will be looking to repeat that, although starting a lot further down than the third place that they had last week, so does need to climb it very, very quickly. Jackson here, someone who we've not talked about in the past couple of races, but had a very, very good first race, Jesse, is currently finding himself in 5th with Ertan just ahead of them. Now, Ertan last week, another driver who had a brilliant run, found their first race win of this season. Oh no, someone actually took some dirt on the side there, looked like they're about to spin out, and has actually just hit a car on the rejoin as well. It's only a slight tap, but they're looking rather unsettled there as de Havilland is trying to fight off. I think that's Stevenson they're trying to fight off for position here. They're trying to find their way through. It was Stevenson had gone wide, and they're now just tapping each other all the way around this right-hand corner. Looks like Stevenson is still going to be ahead just by the time they get to the final corner, but de Havilland not happy about how that went down, so he's going to flash Stevenson to let their feelings be clear then. Honestly, I don't blame them, Jesse. Stevenson lost it on that corner, tried to rejoin, and that was particularly rough from both drivers there as they just tapped each other all the way around that final corner. I think we were very lucky we did not see trouble from either of them.
Well, I'm not a steward, and I don't have to be today, so I'm going to say
Oh,
Rubbin's racing, but that was not Rubbin back there getting completely turned 3 wide at the exit
oh,
of turn 2. That's Joe Gleason, Daly, Kazimirski, and Yan Yo all together here. Daly pressuring now to try and get around Joe Gleason. That's a pro car on an AM car, and these two know each other. So how will this go? Gleason lets him in,
oh.
realizing he has more to lose. Jordan Daly just about gets the pass done. Meanwhile, Yan Yo and Kazimirski continue side by side before they finally get it settled out. Yan Yo picks up a spot into the top 10. Kazimirski has to wait for another time.
Chaos unfolds as Gleason goes for a move around the outside of Jordan Daly here. Looks like they've pulled it off as well. It's very clear by the time the corner has done. And brilliant job from Gleason there around the outside. But here we have Yo currently fighting off Olsen. And it looks like they've tapped. Olsen's going to go off the track there and have to tuck back in behind the Alpine car, which is now pressuring Yo. So a lot of chaos now starting to happen, Jesse. Just people, you know, falling a little bit short, going a bit wide on the corner, and you just see how many cars are going for that opportunity. Of course, Daly there found a space next to Gleason. Usually in some races, especially if they're one of the endurance ones, you see them sort of maybe back out a little bit, not go for the move if they've not done it very quickly. But Daly there found their space and stuck to it, really fought Gleason, tried to push them off the track, tried to make that space even bigger than it was. And for a second, it looked like they had it until Gleason fought back. And that's really the joy of these 20-minute races, that you don't have as much time as you do in some of our other championships to climb. You have to go for the moves quickly, and that, Jesse, is why I think we see so much chaos on GT4 Thursdays.
Right, you are, partner. And just a reminder for those of you that aren't with us or haven't been with us this season, it's 2 20-minute races, full points for both races. Qualifying sets the grid for both races. There's no live stewarding on Thursdays. Matthew Kingston Lee, the best name in sim racing, is going to run out of track space here trying to make that pass. It's dark. He was on the inside and just outbraked himself. He may have the best name in sim racing, but he doesn't have the best braking power there on the inside. Just a little ambitious, didn't quite pull that off. But what a crazy race. Steven in chat is predicting how many penalties there's going to be, but no live stewarding, so I'll have to check the math in 1 week's time. Something else I noticed, Michael Redford, who qualified third in AM, was super stoked about that qualifying effort. They're down in like 27th place. They were collected, no doubt, in that turn 2 accident, and as happy as they were about that qualifying position, they were probably frustrated by that. So keep an eye on your third place qualifier in AM. If they can get back up to a top 5, we'll start with the top 5 position in that class. We'll see if that will happen as we continue to watch Artur Kazimirski try and get by Daly. Keep in mind, they all sort of fanned out. Daly was in front of Gleason, Yo was in front of Kazimirski, and now it is reset to not again.
It certainly has. There's a lot of work to be done from all sides here as Kazimirski tries to close the gap yet again to Daly. Of course, Kazimirski from lap 1, Jesse, was putting pressure on Daly and then fell back a little bit when all of the chaos unfolded and Daly brung it to Gleason. Kazimirski sort of started to fall behind as they had to hold off Yo. So Kazimirski's got a little bit of catching up to do if they want to get back into that fighting position. Someone else who's got a lot of fighting to do right now is Phil Roberts, who's just trying to find their way through the lower split. They've clearly not had a great first lap or a great qualifying. Now has 4 cars in a completely different class ahead of them, going to be looking to fight for them quickly as they look towards the inside of Watton here, trying to go through their hairpin, get out just ahead of them. It looks like Watton's going to be a bit lenient here. Of course, Watton not in an immediate fight, won't be too sad about having to let Roberts through there. Of course, doesn't have to by any means let a car through just because they're in a different class, but might be thinking it's best to do so if it can make them avoid trouble. Here's Matthew Kingston Lee, who we saw earlier. They went for a dive down the inside, missed their braking marker, and is now finding themselves all the way down 22nd, Jesse. So I'm wondering if something else has happened here, because they certainly did not fall this low before. As Ellis, who's struggled last week, needs a good race weekend, is going to be retiring, Jesse. Ellis, who we thought today would just be looking to finish to gain the points they needed to buffer them back into first place, won't be getting points for this first race. That's going to affect the championship, surely.
Well, it sure is. That means after race 1, we're going to have a new championship leader in AM today. It was a tough week a week ago, and unfortunately for Ellis, it has continued into round 4 as well. Late championship shakeup in the points, and it's basically now an AM, an all-out free-for-all for a championship win. Kazimierski still trying to get by Daly. Yan Yo still trying to get by Kazimierski. Gleason has put a little bit of a gap on this pack now and is trying to chase down Will Stevenson, who's 2.5 seconds up the road, towards Zidlow, who has the Speed Juice fastest lap of the race award. He is 4 seconds out in front of Boardman. Klosowski, by the way, has been right around 6/10 behind Boardman pretty much this entire race. Not gaining, but definitely not losing either. Ertan settled into 4th place, and Jackson, the 123 Porsche, is right behind Ertan in 5th place.
Well, Gleason was looking for a great result today, and currently it's looking like that's exactly how it's going to be. All they have to do is stay out of trouble now, because they've got a 5-car buffer between Olsen, who is 2nd place in the same class as them. So Gleason's having the perfect race today. Currently we're watching Schultz, though. They are putting pressure on Hull just ahead. Of course, when we were looking at the standings, these two both struggling for points will not be after this race if they can finish where they are now, and they're both showing what they can do. Probably going to try and fight into the top 10 soon. I know at one point Hull was putting a lot of pressure on Jan Yo, Jesse, but I think they fell back having to defend from the Alpine here. But you can just see the Alpine is looking for that move. It's not quite found it yet. They've not been too eager either with the overtakes. Of course, something we see from a lot of the front runners, a lot of those people that go really fast around the track, you see them putting the pressure on very, very quickly, not necessarily committing to an overtake, but you see them looking for those opportunities. They stick their nose in on the inside to let the driver ahead know they're there, and they really put pressure on the driver. Who's gone off there? Someone's just gone off the side of the track. That's the 135.
135. That's Joe Gleason. Joe Gleason has gone off the track in a big way. That car isn't moving. That reeks of a mechanical issue for the AM leader.
That's changed everything. Gleason, who originally had a huge buffer to the cars behind, is now off track, has returned to the pit lane, and most likely retiring from the race. That changes everything, Jesse. Looking to have a perfect race today. Gleason's not going to be happy with how that turned out, and like you said, wondering if that's just a mechanical issue. Had a problem with the car. We don't have a replay either, which means most likely nothing happened with another car there. That is just a fault of the mechanics in some way, and Gleason not going to be happy with how this all went wrong so quickly. But going back to what I was saying, Jesse, we see a lot of the front runners, they put pressure on the cars ahead, they look to the inside, they start putting their noses in, a bit like Jackson here is doing to Ertan ahead. Look to sort of make a move there, didn't quite commit to it, but that's what I mean. You have to put the pressure on, you have to let the car ahead know you're going to be attacking at every possible opportunity, and that's what makes the defense crack. So if there's one thing I want to see here out of, oh, where have they gone? Well, I was going to say, if there's one thing I want to see here out of Schultz, it's that I want to see them put pressure on Hull here, but Schultz had an accident of their own. I think I actually saw them yellow flagged at the side of the road briefly for a second there. Has fallen all the way down to 23rd place. We'll be continuing so far by the looks of it, but something went wrong with that Alpine, Jesse, and they're no longer putting pressure on the Aston, that's for sure.
By the way, the Joe Gleason incident, you were right on all accounts. Ted Edwards reporting Joe Gleason lost the ability to shift his race car.
Well, that is not what you want to happen. Of course, half of the race depends on the shifting up and down. So Gleason going to have a very sad end to the race here. Maybe looking to join us back for race 2. We'll see if they can fix whatever has gone wrong there.
Go to automatic shifting, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, anything at this point. You've got 6 minutes to try and fix something. If they can't fix the mechanics, then they've got to just go in. They've got to turn automatic shifting on, just try and hope they can make something out of it. Gleason looks so strong this weekend. They'll still have, as well, of course, qualifying determines the starting order for both races. I'm losing my words because I'm watching Pimlott try and hold off Schultz through the final corner. They got ever so close, but Pimlott manages to defend. But anyway, as I was saying, not as I was saying, Schultz again, looking for the outside going around the first corner here. Not going to get a breather here, Jesse, because it looks like the Alpine eager to climb back up as quickly as possible. Gleason's going to hold, not Gleason, Pimlott, going to hold strong as they went through the first corner down the inside, but then loses it. Coming out of the corner, is now completely off the track, trying to hold it together, rejoins on the hairpin, goes wide yet again. Can't seem to find the track, Pimlott, and that is going to spell the end for that race against the Alpine there. And well, we saw it. It looked good for a second. Pimlott looked confident in their defence and then lost it all in the first corner. Does manage to tuck back in just before Redford there, I believe. Not an ideal set of corners for the 913 Aston Martin.
Well, we said it at the start. You wreck here, you wreck off into oblivion.
Oh, no!
Basically, all the 666 off here. The 666 completely off the track. Ivan absolutely losing it himself. But case in point, you have a crash here. You don't necessarily have a crash. You just wreck off into the night, essentially. There's so much runoff room here around a lot of this racetrack, and it's all grass, so you just slip sliding like it's ice. And it just takes so much to come back. You saw Pimlott come back on the racetrack and try to brake, but because the tires are still dirty and he didn't have the distance, just continue to go off track again. It is such a frustrating affair. This is de Havilland and Will Stevenson. This battle here hotting up between the two. This is for 6th place. Riding on board with the Connection Lost Racing driver of Will Stevenson. Now, does Stevenson know that de Havilland had heavy contact? Was that between these two drivers earlier in the race, or was that between Jackson and de Havilland? I don't recall. But either way, de Havilland's already been frustrated from some fender-to-fender contact. And William Stevenson, he's going to get up there and maybe add a little bit to it. What you saw, by the way, that dust, that was actually from Jackson in the 123, blinding both of those drivers there.
Well, that's the other thing. If you go off track here, Jesse, you just kick so much dirt up onto the road, ever so hard to see what you're doing. We're going to watch the Alpine again. This time they're actually the defense. They're trying to hold off Fuertes. Marshall, it's a bit of a slide around that hairpin. They're going to give the Alpine the space regardless, which gives Schultz a nice opportunity here to just try and catch up with Kingston Lee ahead. But Schultz, who originally fell back quite far as well, now looking to climb back up the orders. We now watch Yo trying to take on Daly. We've watched these two a couple of times, never fighting each other yet. But this is Jan Yo's chance to show what they can do. Of course, they've cleared Kazmierski at this point. Now looking to clear Daly as well. Has had some brilliant pace so far here at Snetterton. And doing it in the Ginetta of all things is going to be struggling to find it against the Mercedes here. You saw them hit the inside of that corner and it really unsettled the car. And you've got to try and avoid that on future laps because... oh no, they've actually gone wide here as well. And yet again, we've seen two wheels hit the dirt, Jesse. They lose the car and then it just takes so long to recover, and it really is spelling how this race is going so far, which is just try and stay on the track. The second you go off, you're losing positions that you don't want to lose, and I think Kazmierski now will be back through Jan Yo here. I think they might manage to hold on to the position against Hull. They've not. I think they've actually dropped all the way back behind Bryant and will now be looking to hold off Olsen. So that's what happens here, Jesse. Jan Yo goes off slightly in the corner, losing a good 10 seconds, maybe even more there, as Stevenson took a lot of the grass there on the inside of the hairpin. Joe Gleason appeared in chat to say they had to quit out. None of the buttons on the wheel would work, couldn't shift up or down, and did make the good point, Jesse, that changing gear is kind of important. Gleason, if you're listening to us still, we suggest you might want to turn on auto because you're looking very fast this race. So if you can get back into it for race 2, I just heard on auto to have a jolly good stab at it if you can get anything else working on that wheel.
Yeah, I would say shifting only second most important to the car running, I would say. So take that into consideration. But Phil Roberts here got all he could handle with crack in the 718 Porsche. nearly ran off the race course trying to get around the 15th place driver. Christian Stricker just made a really bad joke, and I'm going to ignore him for the rest of race number 1. Luckily for him, it's only 50 seconds. Crack trying to hold on. Phil Roberts trying to take that spot away. Everything pretty much secure inside the top 5. Well, I say stuff like that, but de Havilland is under fight from Stevenson, but that, of course, is for P6. Ertan with Jackson as well. We ride on the rear wing of Olaf Crack, looking back at Phil Roberts' Ginetta. Oh, what he pointed out earlier in the chat as well, there's a lot of British pride in this race because a lot of the British drivers are indeed driving Ginettas and McLarens. We made it to round 4 of 5, and I hadn't ever noticed that, so well done you for pointing that out.
I can't believe I hadn't noticed that either. I mean, I love both the Ginetta and the McLaren. I'm also a Brit, and it hadn't even occurred to me, so well done to the person in chat who did point that out. There's a very good observation there, and of course, Snetterton, I mean, I wouldn't say it's our pride and joy of Britain racetracks, but it's certainly not a bad one, as we're seeing a lot of action so far during this race. Stevenson and de Havilland yet again having a bit of a tussle coming through the hairpin, managed to find themselves before they get into sector 2, but you can see now Stevenson looking for a move on de Havilland here, looked towards the inside but wasn't able to make it ahead after the corner. He's going to have another couple of shots. I wouldn't be surprised if they went for a move yet again here, Jesse. A little bit too far back, won't be able to find the inside here, will have to continue to chase de Havilland as they come now. They've got one more corner and then they'll be on the long back straight. So Stevenson been putting a lot of pressure on de Havilland in the past, well, 10 minutes, I'd say. Not actually going to really have a chance to do anything. They've not got another lap to do it. This is the final lap of the race, Jesse. Stevenson only has a couple corners left. This is one of them where they've got to try and make the move, and they're still too far back. They have to stick to the back of de Havilland here if they want to try and make it through before the end of this race. Towardzillo, by the way, will cross the line in first place, is still 4.6 seconds clear of Boardman. Towardzillo has dominated from start to finish here in race 1 of Snetterton. Going to be very happy with that performance. Boardman comes in 5 seconds behind in second place, and Kozlowski 1.8 seconds behind will be taking that third place on the podium. But here is the story that we're watching. Stevenson against de Havilland. Did Stevenson do it? No, they are still too far back to make the move on de Havilland. We'll be looking to change that in the next race, and we're going to watch the final cars coming across the line. I was about to say, Jesse, what happened to Gleason? I remember what happened to Gleason. Olsen, though, fallen back to 12th with Ricciardo closing the gap to 3.5 seconds. Not going to be enough to take the lead away from the lowest split for this race, but I mean, if they can repeat that next race, if they can do that a lot quicker, Ricciardo might have a great result as Olsen brings it home first place. Ricciardo will be second, and Crack will finish up the podium for the lowest split. So all around there, Jesse, I would say there's a bit of chaos there, but if we're going, just watching that car go straight into the wall after the start-finish line there.
Tell me how you feel without telling me how you feel.
Yeah, I think that sums up that race perfectly of what was happening. But I was going to say, Jesse, we have a bit of a thing here on GT4 Thursdays. One race is chaos, one race is calm. Now, I will say we've had a lot more chaotic races than that. So if that's the calm race, Jesse, what are we going to see in race 2 that makes it the chaotic one? Or will we finally see 2 calm races in a row? Don't go anywhere if you want to find out. This race may be over, but the next race will be back in probably just under 5 minutes.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, Tim, because I was thinking that exact thing myself. That seemed pretty calm. Yes, there was a kerfuffle in turn 2 for the opening lap, and there were a couple of cars that were unceremoniously bounced off the racetrack, but realistically, that was pretty all right. There was a lot of co-opetition style passes in that race as well. So I think race number 2 is going to be very chaotic in comparison. We always seem to get one calm one and one chaotic race. What do you think in chat? Let us know. Do you think that was calm? Do you think the other race, the next race, is going to be more chaotic or less chaotic? I gotta say, that was pretty calm for a race number one. I just also want to give this man how did Christian know I was going to talk about Frank Olsen? I just want to talk about Frank Olsen. Ran second place, second in qualifying, ran second by a margin to Joe Gleason, never gave up, was able to avoid the early mayhem, and got the win in AM. Absolutely massive job. And if Olsen's name is in the hat for a championship win, this race might go largely for that. And Ricciardo and also Crack as well promoted up to those podium positions. Andy Boardman didn't have anything for Tord Zidlow, Tim Peck, but still a dominant second place.
A brilliant performance from Boardman. Just going back to Olsen, though, Jesse, you mentioned if they're in it for the championship, that would be an important win for them. I can now confirm they are second currently in the championship. Well, they're not second anymore. Ellis didn't finish that race, had to retire very, very early on after an accident. Gleason as well, retiring, gave Olsen the win, which means Olsen will now not only be first place in the lower split championship, but will have a very, very good margin as well to the next car. Although Ricciardo, currently in third, was only 1 point behind, will be a couple of points behind Olsen now, but not so far behind it's unstrikeable. So the lower split championship still very much to fight for here. Of course, not the same story for the higher split. Tord Zidlow will extend their lead a lot further. Another dominant performance. They have pole position, which will give them extra points. They have the fastest lap, Jesse, which will give them extra points. And they also won, which will give them a lot of good points. So Tord Zidlow had the ultimate race there. They've looked dominant in this championship for the first 3 races. Well, had a little bit of a mess up, let's say, Zolder didn't find the track that they wanted, had a very bad qualifying, which then made a really impossible climb happen in the races. So fell a little bit back in Zolder, but they're coming back, and they're coming back hard for Snetterton. Tord Zidlow shows us the dominant performance that they have been doing so far all throughout the championship. Stephen in chat mentions Curse of the AMs that they've noticed over the past week. They said, if you qualify high in the group, it's likely not to end very well for you. And I must say, Jesse, I have to agree. Thinking back on the races that we've had so far, every time we've seen someone in AM do well, they've qualified high, they've led the majority of the race by a long margin as well. Something's always gone wrong. That almost seems out of their control. They've been hit by a driver in a different class, or they've had a problem like we've seen Joe Gleason have, like a mechanical problem. What do you think's happening there? Are we uncovering a new RCI curse, Jesse?
Well, I tell you what, if it wasn't so tragic, it would be humorous. It seems like whoever is the quickest car in AM seems to struggle in the race. It does seem like a curse, and maybe it is the new RCI curse. Previously, we'd talk about a driver, and it would be utter calamity for them. Technically speaking, we did talk a lot about Joe Gleason, and then his buttons stopped working. He couldn't shift his race car. So maybe it's a little bit of both, but either way, just a frustrating way to lose a race. And there's been a lot of lost races this season that are very frustrating indeed. But going back to Tord Zidlow for a moment, no, they will not have a perfect season. It's just not going to happen. They obviously didn't win both races at Zolder, but it has been a small blemish on what has been a disgustingly dominant season, and that's continued here in round 4. And he might be looking to double up here today as well and get another win. The question that I have, Tim, is did Boardman learn anything from race 1 that he can apply to the start of race 2? I'm pretty sure I saw Boardman get into Tord Zidlow a little bit on the short shoot between turns 1 and 2. Maybe he can do one better this time and get beside him, give him a run for the money.
I think for Boardman, it's important that they take towards it on the first corner, because for me, even though Snetterton is one of those tracks where you can overtake people and there's a lot of overtaking opportunities, I think what's important is that Boardman becomes in control of this race. Of course, whoever leads out of that first corner has full control over what they do for the next few laps, and I think that's why Tord Zidlow gained that huge advantage at the beginning. For me, Boardman needs to get through very early on. If it's not the first corner, maybe the second, which it looked like they were about to do in the first race there, but they need to get ahead. they need to start to control this race from the front, which will give them a lot more fighting potential against Towards Idlo. If Towards Idlo does manage to get the first place back, then they can keep switching around. One thing I noticed, Jesse, in that first race is that even though Boardman did end up losing 5 seconds towards the end of the race there were points in the middle where they took big chunks out Towards Idlo's lead. Towards Idlo was basically putting a good 8/10 per lap on Boardman, but Boardman occasionally would chunk a second out towards those time, finding those good laps. So I think looking ahead to race 2, what's important for Boardman for me is that they need to try and find this pace a lot more consistently. They need to get these laps in on repeat, and they need to make sure that their pace is great from start to finish. And I think then they can really take the fight towards Idlo. And honestly, I hope they do for both their sakes. I think Towards Idlo would probably feel it if they came out of this championship having won every single race except for the 2 at Zolder. That might be enough to make Towards Idlo hate Zolder of all tracks, but of course, if Towards Idlo does manage to win this next race, going to look very, very strong and dominant. And honestly, wouldn't be surprised if they are unstoppable going into the final race here. So we're once again returned to the track. We have 2 minutes before the outlap here, Jesse, and I've got to say, I've now said what my thoughts on Boardman's race are. I'm going to ask you in a minute what your thoughts on what Boardman needs to do is. But first, this is the Carbon Sim Sport livery. They're excited to show it off last race. Didn't get the chance to. But this race, we made sure we have it. And you can see just how striking it is. Jesse, earlier you said that you thought the most important part of the race car was the pedals. Well, I'd argue the most important part of the race car, is it the livery and how good it looks? I mean, with a livery like this on Carbon Sim Sport, it's hard to argue otherwise. Jesse, let me know on your thoughts. What do you think of this brand new livery for the Carbon Sim Sport team?
I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant. It fits the team. I always say that I like liveries that you could see on a race car in the real world, and you could see that Carbon Sim Sport team on a grid near you. And well, oh dear, yo, yen yo. Case and point. It's very interesting. This burb. That is a burb. It's very striking, but I do love a car that you could see on a grid near you, and those Carbon Sim Sport cars are very nice, and it's interesting. They have a Porsche livery, and does the BMW Carbon Sim Sport car have a livery? We'll, as we make our way down the grid, we'll take a look at it. But Michael Redford was in the chat saying that he got taken out in turn 1. Now that's interesting. I wonder if that was he misspoke, because I don't remember there being a turn 1 accident. There was a turn 2 accident. Maybe that's what he means. And if it's not what he means, that means that we missed a turn 1 accident that occurred before that. So either way, rather unfortunate for the man who started second in class, rather. But of course, with 2 20-minute races, you get 2 shots at it.
I'm wondering if we did miss a turn 1 instant. Honestly, it's perfectly possible with how that first lap unfolded. Of course, we were so focused on the front, which was getting ever so close to each other, that we didn't really take a look towards what was happening behind, and we didn't really get a chance to. I mean, the front, they looked really strong through the first corner, got very close, and then it all unfolded on the turn 2 hairpin. So hopefully they can avoid that this race. It would not surprise me if it did happen yet again. Of course, Snetterton, the start does open a lot of doors for things happening. Redford has just confirmed it was turn 2, so there wasn't an accident on turn 1, but I will admit, Jesse, I would not have been surprised if there was an accident. Well, we are about to start the outlap here. You can see the cars have already started to pull away. They've got, well, I'd say about 3-4 minutes before they get around to the start-finish line, Jesse, and I'm going to return to you with the question that I was originally going to ask before we had a little look at everyone's liveries, which was, for the people that are not towards it though on the track right now, what do they need to do to have an impact in this race? Boardman and Klazowski, second and third, both very good drivers. What do they need to do to change how that race went for them? Of course, from start to finish, they were basically just driving laps around the circuit. Didn't really get to do a lot here. So, Jesse, what do they need to do to make an impact in race 2? What do they need to do to change things up a bit?
quite simply just have a better start, get a fender in there, do anything, force towards Zidlow to do something he doesn't want to do. Towards Zidlow got a clean line into turn one, and while there may have been a little bit of a touch, it was still single file. The 373 did not give anybody an opportunity to make a move on him in that race, and that's all Boardman has to do. Boardman's got to stick that car down the inside, around the outside, anything to get side by side with the driver of 373 towards Zidlow is going to run away from this field if you don't give them a chance.
Tan currently looking very feisty on the throttle here, has managed to put themselves up to third place. We'll be dropping back. Yeah, we'll be definitely, I think, probably heating up the brakes if anything. Maybe just trying to go around a little bit faster. Of course, those middle section there, sector 2 on Snetterton, when you're on the outlap, Jesse, it's very, very painfully slow. And you're going to see it again as we come round to the end of the track here on that long right-hander that you see on the end at the top of the track map. Again, very, very slow around there. It just feels like it goes on forever. So if Ertan was just trying to get around a bit quicker, I absolutely do not blame them. There, of course, you just want to get around, especially if you want to keep your tyres warm as well. And you can see Boardman wants to keep their tyres warm. We haven't seen a lot of weaving, Jesse, in previous races. I think Boardman probably the first person to do it here. Looks to just get their tyres warm before they go around that first corner. Wondering if that is something that they need to be worried about. I mean, of course, there's only so much you can keep them heated, and there's only so much it impacts the race as well. But I think it certainly will help here, especially on those first set of corners. If not turn 1, will be for turn 2, where we saw cars struggling for grip. And again, going into this race, Jesse, for me, I think everyone just needs to try and find the space. Of course, I said it before race 1, I'm going to say it again now. This track, it gets very thin. One of those thin areas is after turn 1, between turn 1 and turn 2. Very thin bit of track. You need to find space just before that so that you don't have a repeat of what happened in race 1, which is someone put 2 wheels on the grass and spun themselves out into everyone else. But Jesse, we're on the start-finish straight now. Race 1 wasn't as chaotic as we thought it would be, but it was still chaotic. Race 2, we wouldn't be surprised if it was even more chaos. Jesse Lee, take us away.
The cars on the front straightaway, 2 by 2. Down the very long straightaway. Will race 2 be chaotic or will it be calm? We're about to find out. Towards Zidlow gets a decent enough jump. Boardman looking to make a move around the outside. Towards Zidlow shading down the inside. Boardman nearly gets into them there and has to back off. It's a free breakaway for Towards Zidlow. Klazowski gets a clean run in third place this time. Earthman trying to go the long way around the outside. Didn't quite get it done. 3 wide into turn 2. Further back into the pack.
Oh, no!
Contact there. Heavy contact. Was that Tom Bryant? No, that's Phil Roberts. Phil Roberts gets tapped and turned around on the exit of turn 2 with a couple of other cars in tow, and everybody else gets away with it. Towards Zidlow leads the race cleanly as the fight continues in the pack. De Havilland finds himself in a familiar fight up near the front of the grid in between a few drivers. Kazimirski trying to get a run on the 57 and Daly working their way inside the top 10. That was definitely a cleaner start to race number 2, Tim.
Well, it was a cleaner start. A different start, though, is Boardman, who originally fell back a second onto Towards Zidlow last race. Now closing in. It's only 4 tenths off. Towards Zidlow ahead, looking to make a move before the lap is over. They've dropped back a little bit, 6 tenths back now, and not looking overly fighty through these final sets of corners here. We'll be looking to hopefully close that gap around the right-hand turn. De Havilland struggling for grip through that section, manages to weave their way through a lot of cars there, not hitting any of them, which I think is quite an impressive feat, seeing as there was a lot of potential for that to go wrong there. And I was going to say, De Havilland finds himself in a similar situation to last race, but it is reversed. Of course, Stevenson will have the advantage and will be leading them this time, so we'll have a lot more control. Here's another group that we didn't talk about a lot in the first race. This is the 84 Porsche, currently looking at the rear of Ricciardo, who finished second by the end of the last race in their split. Will be looking to climb again, is currently 4th, but, well, here's the story between Boardman Towards Zidlow. Towards Zidlow, who originally in the last race had a nice big gap to work with, Jesse, does not have a gap this time and will be feeling the pressure from Boardman behind.
Well, this is a big improvement. Remember, after lap 1 from the previous race, Zidlow already had a second's gap on Boardman. That's not the case here. It's less than a quarter of a second. These two are still very close. If Boardman can keep the pressure on, you just never can tell how it's going to go. Chevrolet versus Chevrolet here. Henry and de Havilland racing each other side by side. Looks like de Havilland has a little bit more pace and makes the pass on one of the various hairpins that we have on the race course. The VRM Racing Chevrolet up one more spot, up into 8th place after a nice, and as much as I can tell in the dark, a clean move. Something else I've noticed, Joe Gleason, who has the Speed Juice Fastest Lap of the Race award, is somehow way back now, and Olsen has a huge lead in the AM class. How on earth did Joe Gleason get the quickest lap and lose all of that time?
He didn't, Jesse. Gleason started in last for this race. That means they've climbed about 10 positions in, 2 laps? As Gleason gets yet another one there. Slides a bit on the exit of the corner, which will give an advantage to Kingston Lee, who wants to strike back, but won't be able to find the room. Gleason, well, I can tell you how they have the fastest lap, Jesse. Has had an absolutely amazing start to the race here. Of course, they started last. They wanted to start first. Not far off it, only 4 cars between them and Olsen. Gleason could be in for an absolutely...
He left the session.
They did, left the session, joined back in last place. Gleason's looking for the comeback story of a century here, as they're already up to second in their split. Would not be surprised if they find themselves in first soon, or at least fighting for it. Well, you all want to see who's in first for the high split right now. Boardman's still trying to chase down towards Zidlow here, not able to find a move yet, but I'm sure it's coming, Jesse. Managed to stay within that 5/10 of a second mark, so still in striking distance towards Zidlow ahead. Well, here's de Havilland, who has been fighting through their version of the pack. I believe that's the other Chevy up ahead. Well, actually, maybe that's not. That might be. It looks more like an Aston Martin to me. Jesse Lee, are they currently looking at the rear of Stevenson? They're not. No, that is for up ahead. De Havilland is currently looking at the other Chev. So we will see whether they can make the move on them. Well, they're looking certainly strong in this race. They look strong in race 1 as well. We'll be looking to repeat that. Whilst I might have a bit of a breather there, Jesse, I might have just jinxed myself there, but I'm going to mention Stephen in chat, who said that the best thing to do in their opinion is to manage the aggression. You've got to be smart when you're picking the overtakes, and I couldn't agree more. They said the track is unforgiving. If you miss your points, you're setting up the exit before a straight. It needs to be the optimal choice, and I have to agree. That is exactly what I think these cars need to do here. You've got to look at what happened in race 1. A lot of people went for overtakes, they missed their braking marker, and then they had a really bad exit into the next corner, which meant even if they got that overtake done, Jesse, they're basically giving the position straight back. So Stephen, I think you've just nailed that, in my opinion. A great analysis from you there. Charlie Marine is cheering on Tom Bryant, I believe, says go Tom in the chat, and Mr. Milf says, Joe Gleason in P2, you love to see it. Well, we do love to see it. Gleason has had an amazing start to the race, and Jesse, he's not slowing down. He's catching Olsen, and he's catching Olsen quick. There may be 3 cars between them in a different split, but those gaps aren't huge, Jesse. They're all within a second. Gleason could be on for an absolutely amazing race here.
Gleason's still got 4 cars to pass, including the class leader, to get there. But if there was any car that could do it, it could be Joe Gleason, Ireland's favorite son. Remember, he had a second in the bag to anybody else in his class, reminiscent of Zidlow in the pro class. Boardman, though, doing an excellent job. It's hard to say what the difference is for the 69 Alpine in race 2. It was a second gap after 1 lap of race ago. Now, though, there's absolutely nothing in it. I don't know if Zidlow is playing with him here or Boardman has found a new gear, but otherwise it is very close indeed. And off some corners, it's a little too close for comfort, quite frankly, but an excellent race at the front of the field brewing here as they enter the back straight again. Klazowski in 3rd place with Ertan in tow. Yo in the 48 rounds out the top 5. Daly still in 11th place. I thought they would be up closer to Kazimierski by now, and Henry did get back by de Havilland earlier. We didn't catch that, but that battle between the Chevrolets still going on. Olsen leads in the lower class with Gleason several cars behind, but absolutely flying here. Watton, the third place driver in that class, fighting with Ricciardo for the final podium spot honors. But Andy Boardman is just not giving up tonight.
I said Andy Boardman had the pace in him. He just needs to do it consistently. And, well, Jesse, I think this is him showing us that that's exactly what he intends to do here. Andy Boardman is bringing the fight towards Idlo, has been constantly putting pressure on for the last 9 minutes. And I wouldn't be surprised if it continues. Haviland there knocks someone off the track. I believe that's Kazmierski, who's had a bit of a tap with de Havilland. We're going to have a race replay, see exactly what happened here. There's 3 cars almost going wide into the first turn. Not quite, but you can see there's no room here, and Haviland loses grip, slides about on the exit of turn 1, and just slams Kazmierski into the wall on the outside there. I can tell you now, Kazmierski not going to be happy with how that turned out, and I imagine we will be seeing a report come out after the race. Of course, de Havilland, they're not going to be happy with how that turned out either. Definitely not the situation they wanted to be in. We'll be looking for more room the next time they come through turn 1 here, and Olsen has just been spun out by Pimlott here. Gleason's going to have come through. Olsen can't seem to get back on the track. This is going to affect the race for the lower split here, Jesse. This is what will define Olsen's downfall to Gleason. You can see Gleason going through wide there, but will not be sad about how they do it. Olsen struggling to get back onto the track, and, well, what was looking like could be a great race for Olsen would have been one of the toughest defenses they'd have had to have done, has now just disappeared. 19th place it will be for the number 82 BMW driver, and that will be the end of the race for first for them in their class, as it looks like Stevenson looking for a move here around the outside of Jackson will be making contact, and Jackson's now facing the wrong way. Jesse, what was looking like a very calm race 2 has fallen apart. Cars are hitting each other left, right and centre, and loads of cars facing the wrong way on the track right now. Well, we know who the winners and we know who the losers are going to be from this situation, but I tell you what, Jesse, maybe not the chaos we were expecting in race 2, but the chaos is starting to unfold. Does this surprise you here, as we had a very clean looking race 1 between drivers? Does it surprise you that race 2 is looking a lot more untidy for a lot of the cars on track right now?
It's a duality, Tim Peck, because no and yes. Yes, because I thought we were going to get away with it as Gleason very nearly gets into the 2 of Scholes. But, yeah, yes and no. Yes on the fact that everybody is already kind of aggressive in the first place. This is your second race, and especially if you didn't have the outcome of race 1 that you were looking for, where you felt like you left something on the table, the alarm bells are going off in your head, the final grains of sand are running out of the hourglass, and all the other metaphors you want to make. So that, to me, is why you're seeing the aggression. Plus, a lot of these drivers, again, frustrated from what happened in race 1, looking to make up for time. And Will Stevenson, that was a very unfortunate move that was made there. Got him inside the top 5, but after post-race stewarding, I don't think he's going to be able to keep that spot. And on top of that, talk about other issues, I'm not sure Olsen, wherever they finish, that they're not going to be moved back more because they didn't hold their brakes and they rolled forward after the crash to begin with. So if that's reported, I'm sure the stewards aren't going to allow that to stand either. So that's going to further compound Olsen's problems that he had from that accident that really wasn't his fault. But let's reset the race, because a lot of stuff has happened in the past 5 minutes. Torzidlo now has, for the very first time in this race, more than a second lead. He's begun to gap Andy Boardman ever so slightly. Kozlowski is still third and has a nice gap of their own. Ertan and Stevenson round out your top 10. De Havilland promoted all the way up to 6th place. Daly in 7th, building off of their fine week they had a week ago, and a nice race 1 as well. And you've got the battle for what is effectively 10th place here as Huell, we look back at Scholes and Gleason all fighting over that spot. Ricciardo, who was very nearly off the podium earlier in this race, is now up into second place. And Suominen, a guy who we've not talked about all night, in third in the AM class. Chaos. I can't lie to you folks, I like it a little bit.
Well, Jesse, I'm going to be stealing your job from you here. Jesse, everyone that knows them, likes to do the math in these races. Well, I have now taken the math from Jesse. Jesse, I've been just trying to work out who is currently leading the championship in the lower split right now, and I believe it will be Ricciardo. Of course, Olsen's dropped down to 4th. Ricciardo is currently still in second, and well, Olsen's also looking at a penalty maybe for what happened with them trying to rejoin the track. Jesse, I believe the championship will be 1 point difference between Ricciardo and Olsen if they finish in these current positions that they're in. Well, I've got to say, the championship of the low split is looking like it's going to go down to the final race, and it's going to be going down to the exact position you're going to have to come only above the person you are fighting in the championship. And I think next week when we come back for the final race of the season, Jesse, the big talk is going to be who comes out trumps in that lower split here. Of course, Boardman is now dropping off towards Zidlow ahead. Looked to be very, very strong coming through the first part of this race. Is now dropped back to 1.6 seconds. And I'm just wondering, Jesse, if maybe Boardman gave it their all, is now not being able to find it, had to drop back because they're just losing it in the tyres. We mentioned their tyres at the beginning of this race and how Boardman looked to be trying to heat them up. I'm thinking maybe they gave it their all, maybe used a bit too much of the tyres and is now struggling to keep grip, and that's why maybe they're dropping back. Although saying that, closed about 5/10 of a second there, although not significant enough to get back within that 1 second. So we'll see how that has turned out. Olsen though, back up to P3 in their split, managed to find the move on Redford, although Redford's flashing them there. So, oh, that's not Redford. Hang on a second. Who is that that's on track next to them there? Because that wasn't. Oh, I think I'm looking at the wrong battle, Jesse. You've lost me here. You completely lost me. But we're here currently looking for a move on Daly. Daly managed to find himself in the chaos all the way up to 7th place, and I've got to say, Jesse, there are the people who actively won the chaos. Those are the people who you saw managing to stay on the track despite being hit, and then you've got the people who subtly won out in the chaos. People like Daly, who weren't involved in any of the accidents that happened, but Daly's managed to find himself up to 7th place here. They are pressured currently behind from Henry Fur, but well, if we've seen anyone do some defending today, Jesse, it's been Daly, and I wouldn't be surprised if Daly continues. Has 4.5 minutes to continue defending their position. I think they can do it. What do you think?
I think that I would literally want to try and pass anybody in the world more than having to pass Jordan Daly. So that's my take on that. That's a hot take. But I would not want to have to pass Jordan Daly. Jordan will block you into pit road if he needs to. He's not going to give up 7th place. That ain't going to happen, but Henry will certainly try. Battle hardened tonight, racing the other Chevrolet of de Havilland that has disappeared ever so slightly up the road. Conrad Jackson in the 123 Carbon Sim Sport car. Been a rough race, too, for Jackson, as they have had all sorts of troubles just trying to pick up the pieces here and pass the 931 AM car and get a couple of positions back up there in front. He could very much gain from the 42 and the 555. You talk about teams and drivers that have benefited from the chaos. We talked about Daly. Neil Pimlott's having a decent race. Remember, they didn't finish race 1. Will Stevenson's up inside the top 5. De Havilland, who was racing for, I think, 9th or 8th earlier, now up to 6th place. You got Joe Gleason, who has went from effectively last to first in their category, and they may not be done. Gleason's being very courteous to Huell and Scholes in front of them, realizing that he has the most to lose, does Joe Gleason. But beside that, it's very it's very touch and go here in the final 3 minutes as Jackson nearly goes off track there, goes really wide, just trying anything to try and get an overlap on Ricciardo there. And that's what you got to do at a track like this. You just got to get that overlap and hope that you're able to complete the pass. Crazy race number 2. Phil Roberts down in 20th place here, getting a spot for 19th over Suominen.
Well, it looks like they're fighting for it. Just Suominen actually makes contact with Roberts there. Looked for the inside, went for the dive bomb, and just didn't manage to pull it off. Phil Roberts driving the Ginetta is a Digby car. Well, it certainly is a Digby car. Someone in chat mentioned earlier that the Ginetta needs some love. Well, the Ginetta absolutely gets the love. So we'll be seeing it. Unfortunately,
love tap right there.
Yeah, had a bit of, I mean, that's the perfect way of putting it, Jesse. Roberts gets spun out, does manage to rejoin the track, but certainly won't be looking at good pace anytime soon, because I think they'd have probably picked up a bit of side damage from that. Well, here's Fwert. They're currently bringing the fight to Daly. Well, here's Jackson. They're currently bringing the fight to Ricciardo. Jackson, who fell from 5th place, had a bit of an accident, spilled all the way back down into 16th, now finds their way back up into 15th. I think Ricciardo probably just let them through there. Doesn't want to get involved in an accident. And even though Jackson was providing a split buffer to Olsen behind, well, they're still about 4 seconds off Jesse. So I think, honestly, Ricciardo probably just wants to stay on the track without the trouble. And I think we're going to be seeing that a lot now, as you've got a lot of cars that were going very, very fast, find themselves in the mid-pack, somewhere where they're not used to being. And I'm not surprised that we're seeing a lot of these cars not defend too hard against them, because honestly, you don't want to get in an accident here. We've seen how much it can cost. Well, if Jackson's anything to go by, it's 10 places. Two people who are fighting though, Jesse. Jordan Daly and Fwert, as Fwert looks to the inside of Daly here, gives him a bit of a tap on the way through. Daly's going to try and rejoin the track ahead of Fwert. Manages to do so here. I think Fwert probably lifted off maybe a little bit there. Daly found the track and is now yet again defending the number 68 Chev behind. Well, Jesse, I think this could go down to the end. We've only got 20 seconds left in this race here.
Oh, no.
What does Fwert need to do to get ahead? Oh, no, what?
Tim,
oh, no.
It's happened again. Joe Gleason has lost the ability to shift his car a second time. That car is parked almost to the chicane on the back straight. Ricciardo has been promoted to the lead in the AM class over Olsen and Redford. That's your top 3 currently, after Suominen had that contact that you saw a little bit ago. So a different podium, Ricciardo, Olsen, and Redford, after Joe Gleason has ran out of ability to shift again.
Joe, what have you done in another life to get this sort of karma? Had the comeback drive of the season, Jesse, started dead last, managed to find themselves back up into first place in their split, and was still climbing through the rest of the traffic that they had on track. Finds himself yet again out of the race. Well, one story that is going to be very good is the fact that Ricciardo is now in the lead, Jesse, for the lower split. Olsen just behind them. Well, they started this race 1 point apart in the championship. They will be finishing this race 1 point apart in the championship. I'll tell you what, Jesse, it's going to be very exciting when we come back next week. It's going to be the story Ricciardo versus Olsen. Who can find the win? And Olsen has just 1 point currently in their favour. Well, Jesse, how did race 2 go? Well, Zidlo very, very happy yet again. Not quite the dominant performance we saw in race 1, but will be 3 seconds clear of Boardman as the time they cross the line. Towards Zidlo, everybody, back to fighting form, wins both races here today. Well, it's not over yet. Fwert is currently looking to find the move on Daly. Daly has all of the advantage here going into the final corner. Got a little bit of a way to go before they cross the start-finish line, Jesse, but I think they're probably going to have it. It might be a drag race to the finish line here before it doesn't quite have the speed. They're going to cross the line. Daly will be ahead, but only just. Daly will take home 7th. Going back, though, up top to what happened to the rest of the grid, Boardman will come 2nd, and Klazowski yet again will be 3rd. So a very standard race at the top here. Ertan will yet again be 4th, and Stevenson will find himself in 5th, de Havilland just behind in 6th. Those two switch roles between the last race. Ricciardo will secure First place, Jesse, for the lower split. Olsen just behind second, and Redford comes in on the end of the podium there in the Alpine. Well, Jesse, that was a chaotic race. I wasn't expecting some of those results. We're going to have a big fight in the lower split on our hands next week when we come back. Gleason in the chat expressing their frustration. Capital letters, my wheel again, FFS with 1 lap to go, and then defeated goes down to the lowercase. Really? And Gleason, I'm not surprised with your reaction. That's probably exactly how I'd react there. You've had it rough this race. You look to be having the perfect race 1. You look to be having the perfect race 2 as well, and neither went in your favour with your wheel completely cutting out. Well, it goes back to what Steven said, everybody. If you start the lower split in the pole position, bad things are going to catch up with you sooner rather than later, and we just hope that next week that curse will break itself. Well, we will be finding out. I'm just actually going to check the track we're going to, Jesse. I believe it's Imola. It is Imola. And, well, Imola's how I started this whole championship, Jesse. The first race I ever commentated was Imola, and let me just say, it was chaos. If next week is half as exciting as the first Imola I ever witnessed was, well, I'm going to be happy. That's where we're going to be next week. And Jesse, that is race 2 all wrapped up now. What are your thoughts on what's just happened here?
I've got a couple, and the first one is that might be the final finishing positions for the race, but that is pending post-race stewarding, which I have a gut feeling there is going to be a lot of for some of the cars out there. I am uncertain about so many of the positions on the grid. What I am certain of, the Carbon Sim Sport domination will continue today, and I don't think that'll change for the final round either. Of course, they put 2 cars on the podium, first and third. Boardman, who just about kept up with Zidlow for those 20 minutes, started to lose it there a little bit in the end. But look at this. Look at Daniele Ricciardo, absolutely thrilled with putting a win in the column. And why not? Just a brilliant race from them, and might be their birthday. They might have to check because they just were given a gift there, but an excellently ran race to put themselves in that position. Final results of the race confirmed, pending post-race penalties, of course. Zidlow wins both races today, back on form for the Carbon Sim Sport Porsche driver. Boardman, Klosowski, your podium there. And of course, Ricciardo wins over Olsen and Redford in the lower class as well. What a crazy day. Race 2, Tim Peck, was a little bit more chaotic.
Race 2 was a little bit more chaotic. I think a lot of it, though, Jesse, did fall down to everyone looking that little bit more uncomfortable in the car, not finding the spots that they wanted to. I think there was a lot of instance between drivers this time, whereas race 1, I'd say, was a lot more one driver went off, didn't necessarily hit anyone. It was more just environmental accidents. So race 2 and race 1 definitely differed. Both, I'd say, had equal amounts of chaos. I wouldn't say there was a clear-cut winner for either of them there, but I'd certainly wouldn't call them calm. Well, Jesse, you know what time it is. It is time to thank our partners. Of course, we've got a bunch of partners that help us make all of these races possible. RaceDepartment.com, they are your source of sim racing news and mods. AK Informatica, they provide our server solutions. Driver61.com, you can get 25% off driver coaching using our discount code. The link is in the description, and you can go to driver61.com to redeem it. It certainly helps, and if you want to be anything like the guys we have seen on track today, then Driver61 will be happy to help get you up to racing speed. Fanatec, they are your one-stop shop for the best sim racing equipment. You can use our affiliate link. That's also in the description below. It won't cost you anything, and it does help us out with server costs. Fanatec gear, of course, renowned for being one of the best sim racing equipments. We'd argue it's definitely the best. Simracing.gp, well, are you tired of public lobbies? You want to join simracing.gp for the community-based sim racing. It is totally free, and you get slightly calmer lobbies. Although, again, Jesse, I say this every single week that you get calmer lobbies when they are organised. Certainly not been showing that in the recent GT4 championships. We've had a lot of chaos in the past few weeks, and I don't doubt for a second it is going to continue next week. Hopefully you can all join us next week. We will be going to Imola for the final race of the season. Towards Idlo, all they have to do for the high split is keep it together. If they can get 2 finishes, I'm sure they will be clear of pretty much everyone for that championship. Of course, it's not the same story for the lower split. We're going to be watching a battle between Ricciardo and Olsen. There's 1 point currently splitting them, Jesse, going into the final race. So they are going to be battling down to the wire. And Olsen currently has an advantage. Well, it's 1 point, so it's not as much as they are probably hoping. Well, if you're not tired of the racing yet, which I don't think you will be, that was very, very exciting. You can join us tomorrow for the Friday GT3 Championship. Jesse Lee will be back in the commentary booth with Mike Jones. That's for the American special of Friday GT3, where you've got 2 very, very loud Americans arguing constantly in the booth. It's a spectacle. You should go witness it. And then if you can't get enough of them, join them again on Saturday in the evening for the Night Owl series. That is yet again Jesse Lee and Mike Jones commenting. I've just been told no because I think I'm wrong. I think someone else commentates that now. Jesse, who does it with you now?
No, there's the error is that there's not Night Owl this week. Of course, the one-off endurance races are this season, or are this weekend. So no Night Owl for a second consecutive week. Night Owl will be back in 1 week's time. That championship will continue, but this weekend there is no stream on Saturday.
That would be why Jesse kept saying no to me, and that serves me right for continuing to go even though he kept saying no. So I will be listening to you again in the future. Monday, we will be back next week. This one is definitely happening. Do not tell me I'm wrong. February the 21st. Ryan Gill, I believe, will be joined by Doughton for the commentary of the Monday Euromasters 2 tournament. On Wednesday, Jesse will be back yet again, this time with Nate for the Diamond Drive Cup. I mean, I tell you what, I've tuned into the past few streams of that, Jesse, and so far, every single race has been so exciting for the Diamond Drive Cup. So if you enjoy sim racing, definitely go and check that out. It's absolutely brilliant to watch. Well, that's what we've got coming up, Jesse. Next week, we'll be going to Imola, one of my favourite tracks, and definitely promotes a lot of great racing. Tell me, Jesse, going into this final race, of course, Torzillo is looking very good for the high split. What are your thoughts on the lower split? We've got Olsen and Ricciardo going to be battling out. Do you think anyone has got an edge there, or do you think we're going to be watching until the final few seconds of race 2? I have to agree with you, Jesse. I think that's a very good point you've just made. Anyway,
You're very funny. You're very funny.
Jesse is back. Jesse's back again.
Tim, yes. So Tim, let me just tell you, you're absolutely right, and I couldn't agree that it is going to come down to the wire. And you asked me if anybody has an edge. The answer is absolutely not. We have seen 4 races with 4 different sort of race styles. 4 of those races, not just rounds, 4 of those races have had late race drama, including today, that has changed the narrative. Why would that change for round 5? It won't. 2 races to decide a champion in the AM class. Your guess is as good as mine, and it might be between more than just the top 2, because again, when it goes wrong in a hurry in a 20-minute race.
It certainly does go wrong very, very quickly. And usually, Jesse, it's race 2, which is the more chaotic one. But of course, you will have to wait until next week to find out exactly how this championship turns out. If you don't want to miss it, then I highly suggest subscribing, hitting that bell for notifications, and remembering to like the stream, of course. Well, it's very important. If you don't want to miss the next race, you don't want to miss next week, we will be wrapping up this season 6 of the GT4 Championship. And, well, it's been all over the place. We've watched Torzillo dominate for the majority of the races, and then Zolder, it looked like it might be all starting to fall apart, but Torzillo was back on fighting form. We'll be finding out just how they fare at Imola and how everyone else fares. But until then, well, we will be seeing you soon. Good night, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here today, and enjoy the rest of your weeks. I'll see you next Thursday. Thank you for joining me, and goodbye.